Insurance agents from around the world, welcome to the Insurance Guys podcast. My name is Bradley Flowers, agency owner and insurance evangelist for Portal Insurance here in Mobile, Alabama. And before we get started on today's episode, please help me welcome. He is a 6'3" sophomore from Huntsville, Alabama. Parade first team All-American, Rivals 5-star recruit. He is a fantastic insurance agent and a great American. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Mr. Scott Howell. How are you, Scott?
Man, Bradley, I've got more money than a show dog could jump over today. Are we doing alter egos?
Did you see what I did there?
I noticed. Yes.
I finally flipped it the correct way. You know what I mean?
You did.
It only took 375 episodes, guys, but I finally did it.
It's so funny.
I still have people come up to me and go, "Is Bradley really 6'3"?
The first time I went to an insurance conference after we started doing this podcast, I had two things happen. I had so many people come up to me and be like, "I didn't realize you really weren't 6'3". And I had people message me after the fact that were looking for a 6'3" guy. And missed connections because they didn't know. Yeah, I went to the doctor the other day, and they measured my height, and I was 5'7". I was so devastated.
Really? Is that with or without shoes on?
With shoes on. I was like, well, I've always said 5'9".
Well, I'll say this. A couple things. Number one, I'll say this. Your body type, whatever, like I don't look at you, and there's some guys I look at and go, damn, he's short.
Exactly.
You're not that guy. So even at 5'7", however that shakes out for you, you're in good shape because I don't think anybody looks at you and is like, man, he's short.
Well, what's funny is I wear, depending on the shoe brand, these are an 11. Mm-hmm. I wear between an 11 and a 12, depending on the shoe brand.
Sure, yeah.
And my entire life and my dad's decently tall. My mom's family's tall. And my brother's tall. My brother's 6'1". My entire life, my pediatrician told my mom, he's going to be tall. He's going to be tall. So my mom told me, you're going to be tall. You're going to be tall. And
here we are.
It just never happened. Maybe I'll hit a growth spurt when I turn 40.
You know, I have a funny joke that I used to tell all the time. I heard it from an old college basketball coach of mine. But I wear size 14, which people think, well, you know, that's a big foot, obviously. My toes look like fingers, first of all.
I saw them the other night.
But second of all, I had this old basketball coach one time. So people, since I've been in about the 8th grade, because that's when my foot really started getting big, long, whatever. And people would just walk up to me because I was so skinny growing up. They'd say, man, you've got a big foot. What size shoe do you wear? So I always had this little bit of up until probably the last, 10 or 15 years, had a little bit of a self-conscious thing going on about my feet because they are so big. And I think when I was like 7th, 8th, 9th grade, even in high school, I think I looked like I was a clown wearing clown shoes, you know. Mm-hmm. But I had this old basketball coach one time. He told me this, and I say this to people when they ask me how big my foot is. I'll say, well, I wear a size 12, but a 13 feels so good, I just go ahead and wear a 14. That's a cute little joke, though, right? Like, I didn't think about that. Guys, hey, we've got a big podcast for you today. This is one of listeners' favorite podcasts that we do. Bradley Flowers and I are just chopping it up, talking about what's been going on in our agencies and our world. I will say, today is August the 5th, and once again, Bradley Flowers narrowly misses another hurricane coming through Mobile. So this morning at 6:14 a.m., Hurricane Debbie, Category 1 storm, maximum sustained winds of 80 miles per hour, touchdown ground, made landfall in Clearwater, Florida, little town close to Clearwater. It is currently probably sitting on top of David Carruthers' house. As I just said that, he is probably probably got the eye of the storm over his house right now. But Bradley, you dodged another one, baby.
We did.
I mean, you're like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix, baby.
You know what's gonna screw those people in Clearwater is the fact that it's moving so slow.
Really? flooding.
Because that's with a hurricane, you either want it to be low intensity and moving. You want it to be moving fast regardless. Because that was the problem with Hurricane Sally, which was the last direct hit. And people think like this area gets a lot of hurricanes. Like Hurricane Sally was the first one in 16 years that was a direct hit.
Right.
But it was a direct hit, and it was, I think, a Cat 1, maybe a 2 at some point. But I think once it got inland, it was a Cat 1. And everybody was like, no big deal. Like even James Spann, who is basically weather god in Alabama, was like, yeah, it's not going to be a huge deal. But it was moving so slow that the rain just pounded and pounded. And what happens, the tree roots get soft, the ground gets soft, trees fall, that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm okay with a storm as long as it's moving fast. But
can I say unpopular opinion about James Spann for just a second?
I've tried to get him on this podcast forever.
Oh, would love to.
If anybody listening knows James Spann, please get me in touch with him.
So guys, for those of you that aren't in Alabama, for years, I don't know, Bradley, 20, 30 years, the weather god for the state of Alabama, and he is on a channel called WBRC 6, which I believe is a Fox affiliate out of Birmingham now. Now, he used to be on another channel.
He was on ABC, I think, for a while.
Yeah, he was on ABC, whatever that local affiliate was in Birmingham. And how on God's green earth, the worst business decision possibly in the history of business decisions is how the Weather Channel did not snag him, pay him, double the money, because he would have knocked the bottom out of it.
The thing about James, and I get frustrated with local news really badly. And a lot of them are my friends. I actually, anytime any of the local news stations here need somebody to give their expert opinion on insurance, they usually call me. I've been on the news probably 5 times in the last 2 years. Some of that has been good for me. Some of it they've tried to,
turn it on you.
Big bad insurance man. But what I always do, and I'll give the listeners this tip, if you're asked to do any kind of professional media as an insurance agent, regardless if it's about insurance or not, but especially if it's about insurance, I always film my side.
Right.
So I have a camera or my iPhone going, and I film my side, whether it's print or video. And that way, if they ever try to spin anything you say, I can say, hey, this is actually what was said. But if you go to my Twitter during hurricane season and you hit the search, the first name that comes up is James Spann.
Right.
Because I look at his page. Because the thing about James, so like where I get frustrated with local news, and the local stations here are real bad about it. And it speaks to a problem in all media. It's why podcasts are so popular now, is because I'll see an article that a local news station publishes, and it'll be like, home invasion, family killed. And you're like, oh my God. And you click on it, it's like Chicago news or Chicago. And I'm like, guys, like local news should be reporting local news.
Sure.
And a lot of they're doing it to get clicks. Well, a lot of these weather guys here, especially the local stations, they want a storm that's not coming here. They will almost
still
make
want
you
those eyeballs.
Exactly.
On their,
The thing about James is you get the real. Like if he doesn't know where it's going, he's gonna say, "I don't know where it's going." If he knows where it's going, you get the actual. And he will even call out other weathermen. He does. He calls them shitbag weathermen.
He does.
That's his term, not mine. And he'll say, no, this isn't true. This is, you know what I mean?
So you just walked right into my unpopular opinion about James Spann. I will say, James Spann, 100% weather god. In the state of Alabama, if we've got a bad tornado potential outbreak coming a day or two from now, or a hurricane or whatever it might be, every person in the state of Alabama, regardless of who your local weather person is eyeballs on James Spann. Now, with that being said, Bradley, let me say this. I have noticed over the past 5 years, he is very anti part-time weather guys that are on TikTok.
Yep.
And it feels like a little bit to me, he's almost gone too far. And there have been a couple times, guys, where he's kind of gotten out too far over his skis. And he said, well, there's no way that's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, there are, respected national news organizations or the Weather Channel that's like, hey,
Is there such thing as a respected news organization?
exactly. But there are people who the predictions have changed, and it kind of gives. He loses a little bit of altitude. I've seen that happen with him a couple times. There was the huge ice storm that hit Birmingham 7 or 8 years ago at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
He never said a word about it. Nobody knew it was going to happen. Everybody was at work. Everybody was at school. I think my brother-in-law, who at that time lived out on Highway 280 but worked in downtown Birmingham, did not get home until like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning that night. But I think James, sometimes I think he just goes a little too hard at those guys who just, they're almost like weather hobbyists. And he gets real out over his skis a little bit too much, in my opinion, now. But I will say he is the weather god. If he says it's going to happen, you just about guarantee it's going to happen. But
the only two jobs in this country that you can be wrong and still keep your job are weathermen and economists.
That's right.
Neither one of them know exactly what's going to happen.
Exactly. So when I left my condo, Kim came down here with me. When I left my condo this morning in Orange Beach, it's about 1 hour from that condo to your exactly 1 hour from my condo to your office here. I was walking away with my bag over my shoulder, and Rick DeSantis was on TV down in Florida because I had it on the Tampa local news. Huh?
Is he related to Ron?
I mean, I'm sorry, Ron. Is it Ron DeSantis?
Ron
the governor. The governor. He had all his FEMA stuff on. You know how they put all the, they put when they're going to do these hurricanes.
Speaking of short.
Yeah, right. So Ron DeSantis, Governor DeSantis, was saying exactly what you said when we came on this podcast. He said, the thing about this storm, guys, is it's moving slow, and we're going to have a lot of flooding across the state of Florida. So they're dealing with that this morning. Meanwhile, it is sunny and 94 degrees today here in Mobile, Alabama. So
we are on the good side of the storm. If you're on the left side of the storm,
you're screwed.
Something about the left side's the good side. Something about because it goes,
it's the eastern side.
They go counterclockwise. So the right side just gets absolutely pounded. The left side, there's something to do with the pressure. And I'll tell you too, the two prettiest days I've ever seen in my entire life was the day before Hurricane Ivan hit, which was a direct hit.
Man, bad.
2004, and the day before Hurricane Sally hit, 2020. Those 2 days were pretty. Something about that storm coming, it pulls all the.
Yep.
And it looks like Arizona here. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, and guys, for all of you listening to this podcast in the insurance business right now that are in Middle America, never seen firsthand what a hurricane does, besides the flooding, which is a big deal. And then on the east side, not the west side, but the east side of a hurricane, that's where most of the heaviest winds occur. And you'll see a lot of damage on that east side of a hurricane. But let me give you another little fun-filled microwave tip here. Anytime a hurricane hits you directly or you're in the path, it's all that salt water that it's been sucking up into that hurricane. I was in Gulf Shores. I had one of the first people to get on Gulf Shores when Hurricane Ivan hit as part of a construction company that I was with at that time. And I remember the first thing I thought of, and it was really kind of sad, besides all the Gulf Coast condos and condo buildings that are built right there on the Gulf. It had blown out from the backside where the winds were the heaviest. It had literally blown those out all the way through the front door. They were just a shell. They just looked like a bombed out, like something you'd see in like Beirut, Lebanon, where it was just a shell of a building left. Now, I will say this: the saddest part of the whole thing to me, and you'll see this in every hurricane that comes across, is it sucks up that salt water. And when it dumps it back down as rain, it kills every bit of the vegetation in an area. So Gulf Shores after Hurricane Ivan, all the way Fort Morgan, Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, all the vegetation was dead a week later. And for about a year, you see just everything's just this brown, looks almost like it was burnt. Does that make sense? That was one of the things I noticed the most. And then just the sheer amount of how much sand
Everywhere.
get everywhere. When I say everywhere, like if you've got a driveway and you're, hurricane came across your house, more than likely if the storm surge got up to you, you'll have 3 or 4 feet of sand in your driveway. It's bad, but dodged the bullet today. Got to be grateful. I don't know if I said this to you on the phone or not. I said, man, when your feet hit the floor this morning, you should have been grateful. You're not sitting here dealing with a flooding, basically like the one that y'all had that wasn't terrible, but it was a real big flooding event because it just poured.
Well, the worst part is for us are the knee-jerk reactions from the carriers. And I'm defining them as knee-jerk reactions. Some of them might not be,
Right.
But, we're sort of kind of on the tail end of this hard market a little bit. And God forbid if the wind doesn't blow this year, we're going to be in good shape next year. But
see, that's what pisses me off so much because I feel like carriers kind of lump North Alabama in with, Alabama, y'all get hurt. Hurricane, we're not riding in Alabama.
Well, and it's the opposite too, because I tell people all the time, like the wind problem in Florida is an entire state problem.
Correct.
The wind problem in Louisiana is an entire state problem. The wind problem in Alabama is really a 2-county problem. So it's sort of like all the efforts are made towards North Alabama. We get ignored down here, But I'll tell you, man, like talking to you and talking to some other agents in North Alabama, I think it's easier to write insurance down here now than it is in North Alabama.
Perfect example. Swift.
Yeah.
Riding right now in Mobile, Swift, the SWYFT. Swift Insurance is riding insurance in Mobile and Baldwin counties. Guess where they're not riding insurance? Huntsville, Alabama. Now, folks, I'm going to give everybody a geography lesson right now. So from my house to Bradley Flowers' office located here in downtown Mobile, Alabama, takes me 5 hours and 45 minutes to get here.
And that's if you're booking and not making any stops.
That's right. That's if you're, driving 80 miles an hour on I-65 and you're not making many stops at all except for gas. From my front door where I live, which Interpol can't find you at my house. If anybody ever needs to murder somebody and go into hiding, you need to come to Scott's house. From my front door to Kid Rock's bar in downtown Nashville on Broadway Street, Kid Rock's bar. I've done it 3 times, and all 3 times exact same time. Takes me 2 hours. 2 hours for me to get to Nashville. Call it 6 hours to get to your office.
Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons you and I started this podcast was we were so far away from each other that there was no worried about, we're both competing for this. No, he's all the way down here. I'm all the way up there. So, and you said it one time, and I thought about this. It's brilliant. But you said, these people in the damn Northeast that live in these little old bitty states are like, so do you and Bradley see each other all the time? Dude, I'm 6 hours from Bradley.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they live in Connecticut, which is a state the size of Jefferson County.
So Bradley Staub, however you say his name, with Openly, who we had on before.
Yeah.
His assistant, he's in Boston.
Okay.
I think he's in Boston, which is, you can be in Boston and drive 2 hours and cross 4 states.
Sure.
His assistant reached out to me about a year ago, and she said, hey, Brad's going to be in Birmingham seeing some Birmingham agents. He wants to come see you and go to dinner. And I was like, well, okay, that's 4 hours, 4.5 hours. Okay, he'll probably want to fly out of Mobile, fly into Birmingham, fly to Mobile. And Brad's one of these like extreme travelers like me.
Yeah,
he'll fly somewhere, do a meeting, and fly back.
Sure.
He doesn't stay overnight, And I was like, okay, that's fine. And so a few months later, it came time for that. And she's like, hey, yeah, he's that. They started looking at, oh wow, this is not like flying into Boston and I'm going to hop over to New York,
correct?
Or I'm going to go to Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
it's an hour and a half, and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's
I think people in the Northeast probably don't realize because, like you said, you can be Boston, Philadelphia, New York, and it's a couple of hours,
And
whatever.
that's what I love about those areas.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
cover a lot of ground. But
Yeah, down here, you better get you down mouthpiece in if you're about to drive from Huntsville to Mobile or Birmingham to Hunt. Birmingham to Huntsville's not bad. It's 2 hours, but Birmingham to Mobile, Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, you better fill up with gas before you leave because
For
it's
sure.
4.5 hour drive. Yeah.
well, Scott, it's been a while. What's going on in your agency?
Oh yeah, we are. So where do I start? Guys, I guess, I have always, when we started this podcast in June of 2017, which I found our first podcast the other day on something I found on my phone where we
Did you
were
vomit when you
recording.
listened to it?
It was funny because I was like, welcome to the Insurance Guys podcast.
That was the guy I met, guys.
Yeah.
And then, like
yeah.
5 episodes in, he comes in here yelling and screaming.
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
holy crap, what have I gotten myself
That's
into?
when I instituted my WWE theory that
Yeah.
which, by the way, I listened to a podcast with Julian Edelman. He's got a great podcast that he does now.
Yeah.
He had Colin Coward on last
I love
2 weeks
Colin
ago.
Cowherd.
And Colin Coward, in the middle of this podcast, they start talking about podcasting. And he starts giving his rules of having a great podcast. Have you heard this? Mm-hmm. You have? You heard that episode? Mm-hmm. Well, I started listening to what he was saying after he started this, and I'm like, turning the volume up, and I'm like, yep, check.
Yeah.
But I've always tried to be transparent with our listening audience about the good, the bad, and the ugly. I will say our agency is so Carrie Wallace is our fractional CFO. We have had a year of change once again. It seems like every year for us is like we just bounce from one calamity after another. We have had to make some real serious cuts relative to expenses. Basically through the month of May of 2024, so January, February, March, April, and May, we got to that month. We went over the P&L and balance sheet, and Carrie said, look, Scott, I got some bad news, man. You need to sit down. We need to talk. So we jumped on a Zoom call, and we've lost 140 year over year from 23. We've lost to date, just through May, which is not very long, $145,000 in revenue is the bad news. The good news is we had cut from the previous year $125,000 in expenses, so that left us with a delta of about $40,000 that she said we got to cut $40,000 in expenses on top of the $125,000 we'd cut just through different things we'd stopped doing. And I don't care where it comes from, but we got to cut $40,000 in expenses. And that led to some things getting cut out in my agency, some of which we'd been doing for 10 or 11 years. It also led to one of the craziest stories that I have ever told on this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. So you'll probably want to turn your dial up for this one because this is a nut job crazy story, and I'll try to let Bradley interject with questions because I know he'll have questions about this. But so far, do you have any questions?
I don't know.
Okay. So as part of this $40,000 through May, and there will probably be some more cuts that are coming as well in our agency, could be both general operating expenses and...
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
The revenue you lost, is that factoring in new revenue as well?
Yes, that is absolutely it is.
And is that due to? That's not due to you doing a bad job. That's due to carriers getting off stuff, right?
No, that's us doing a bad job.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're terrible. We have one of the most unperforming agencies. No, it's true. One of the most, and I'll tell you why in a minute. It's a very simple concept, very simple to understand. But we have one of the most underperforming agencies in the United States of America.
Relative,
and I'm just being
to your potential.
100% relative to our potential. Got great people. Love everybody on my team. I would put them up against, from a human being standpoint of just being good people, put them up against anybody. I think they dead level try to do their best for our clients. But we got some big problems that are either going to get fixed or they're going to fix themselves, one of the two. So here comes the crazy story, guys. Make sure you turn your dial up. You're going to want to hear this one. So through the course of looking at expenses to cut this 40 grand out to get us where we needed to be, again, Carrie's taking a very business-like approach to this, which I appreciate and understand. And I have told her on a call with Clinton Orr, I said, listen, Carrie, Clint and I are black and white guys. I don't need it soft soaped. I don't need it. I don't need the political rant of kind of have to read between the lines. I just want you to hit me right between the eyes with it. So she did. And we thought, well, the first thing we probably need to look at doing, in addition to some of these other cuts, is cut some of the fat, like every company in America. And we identified some people that we felt like we could do that, to get where we needed to be. But you obviously don't want to lose your best people that are doing a great job. Not that any of them weren't, but the first place we looked is our director of first impressions. We'll call her Amy because that's my favorite name to call people when, I've was a story to tell. Amy, she had started with us part-time, and she was working out of one of our agency offices, but her main role with our agency is the way that we had our phone system, Lightspeed, set up. And I do, Lightspeed's got a few little bugs and bugaboos in it, but I think overall it probably, based on the rumors I've heard about other phone systems without naming any names, RingCentral, customer service is great. They've always done a good job for us. Yeah. You can play with it. I can listen to people's phone calls, all that stuff. So we had all of our phones for all 6 of our locations. We have 6 locations now, but we had them all funneling to her. She answered the phones and then transferred the calls wherever they needed to go. And she did a fine job. But she started out part-time with us 3 days a week and was making an hourly wage. And then at some point, we had big plans for her. She was going to pass her insurance license exam. She was going to mirror Kaylin Weston, and we were going to turn her, kind of morph her into a commercial account manager, which, my gosh, everybody in the world wants to that's jam up commercial account manager.
That's one of those positions, too, that if the it's not a receptionist, basically.
Yeah.
Is not super necessary if you do have to cut someone or some position.
Correct.
Combined with the fact, and I'm assuming this, I don't know this, if they're not trying to better themselves and get their license, you can't stay in that position forever.
Correct. So here's where the rubber met the road. At some point last year, we decided, because she had done a good job for us, we were going to bring her in full time. And I told Kaylin, I said, Kaylin, I ain't trying to pay people a Snickers bar and a pack of crackers. In the United States of America today, if you pay somebody $35,000 a year after taxes, hell, they're not too far away from the damn poverty line.
Yep.
So we paid her $35,000 salary. And we had all these expectations. Well, here's what happened. Exactly what Bradley just mentioned that I've had to regurgitate to my staff on our last staff call last Wednesday. I said, guys, don't ever forget what I'm about to tell you, okay? The more things that you can do in any business, doesn't matter if it's landscaping, if it's accounting, if it's an attorney, if it's a insurance retail agency office, hell, it could be for a corporate position with a national blue blood carrier. Any position in any job in America, the more you can do, the better job you do at all the stuff you can do, the more money you're going to make. Now, conversely to that, if all you can do in any position with any company in America is one thing, let's just say you are a one-hit wonder, or you don't evolve over time and get better at what you do, and you're not able to do very much, then the less money you're going to make. That's the American way, unfortunately. And I think every kid in America that's in high school needs to understand that. You can go one way or you can go the other. So this young lady, Amy, took her insurance exam twice, failed it both times. No big deal. A lot of people fail it twice. I know a lot of people that have failed the insurance exam twice. She took it twice, failed it twice, and then kind of put it on the back burner, didn't mention it again, it kind of felt like it was, okay, failed that twice, not going to do it again, but I'm not going to mention it, and I'm not going to study for it again. Well, that knocked her out from being able to do a lot of things in our agency, and it knocked her out from being able to move forward with any kind of role like an account manager role, because hell, you can't really do anything if you don't have an insurance license. So we had just about relegated a $35,000 a year receptionist / director of first impressions to the role of that. And there was not, unless she, started studying and got her insurance license. And we could tell that wasn't going to happen. So it was an easy decision. I will say, and here's where the story gets good. I will say, Bradley, to your point, when we let her go, which is what I'm about to tell, the reason it was a good decision is we have not missed a beat. And there is $35,000 back off that's been taken care of, right? So here's what happened. I knew this was going to happen. Carrie Wallace knew this was going to happen. Clinton Orr knew this was going to happen. I was going to go down on a Friday, and I was going to let her go. But Scott is a bleeding heart, and Wednesday before that, 2 Fridays ago when this happened, I was in the shower one night, and I was thinking about going down there and letting her go. But I was also thinking that, I've never let anybody go with this agency. People have left, but I have never walked in and said, "You're fired."
It's a horrible feeling too, no matter how.
And I wouldn't even call this a firing. I would call this a layoff, because she did a great job at the one thing she did. Okay.
No matter how much of a stone cold heart you have, those days leading up to letting somebody go is always terrible for me anyway.
Now, let me say this, okay? I got to stop right there and say this. In my previous occupation, in a different season in my life, my nickname was Hacksaw Howell.
So maybe you don't feel that way.
I worked in a construction company that was pretty big construction firm, and the 2 owners of that construction firm leaned on me to let people go, because there are a lot of people that do not want to do that.
Have you ever watched King of the Hill?
Mm-mm.
There's an episode of
the cartoon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that's my favorite show.
Okay.
There's an episode of King of the Hill where Dale Gribble, who is an exterminator, gets a job at a corporation, white-collar job, and they find out he's so good at killing things that he's also good at firing people. So they make him the in charge of firing people, and he does it in the most ruthless way. And there's one scene where there's a guy sitting there, and this employee comes in, and he's like, "Hey, I'll get to you when I'm done firing this guy." And the guy doesn't know he's been fired yet.
He's like, "What?"
He ends up. That's how I picture Hacksaw Howell.
Yeah. So let me say this as well. Okay. Once you reach a certain point in your life with a large company, or maybe the company you work for goes from small to large, at some point, normally companies will hire an actual human resource department. And now it's off of your plate, because when you need to let's say 100 people go, or 1,000 people go, or 2,000 people go, you don't bat an eye, because you're not going to have to be the one doing it. Somebody else in the human resource department is going to call everybody in, and they're going to say, "Hey, man, sorry about your luck, but you got to go." You do the George Costanza, "It's not you, it's us" kind of thing. So I thought about it Wednesday, thought about it Thursday. I called Kaylin Weston, and I said, "Hey, I don't like letting people go that come on board with our agency, because I've never been that guy that wanted. I feel like if we bring you on, you're part of the family now, and blood, blister, we need to try to keep you." So we had worked out this deal where I was going to come to Hamilton Friday, and because that's where she worked out of,
where
and that's
Kaylin
where
is?
yes, that's where Kaylin is. That's what was going to make that commercial account manager role so easy, because not easy, but she could, they worked side by side in the same office, so there was some synergy there. So we worked out this deal where I was going to come to Hamilton, and instead of letting her go, I was going to just back her hours down. So instead of coming in from 8 to 5 at Monday through Friday, she's going to come in from 10 to 3. We were going to move some money around in some other places to kind of still get where we needed to be. And that's where I made my mistake. Because where I made my mistake was, for the past week, I've been thinking about firing this young lady. And now that we've kind of come up with another plan that would still achieve the same goal, but allow her to be on with us, in my mind, I'm thinking, my God, she should be doing back somersaults and cartwheels that, I didn't get let go. I've got my hours back. I mean, I cut back, but Scott and Kaylin are going to help me find like a part-time job to make up for that money, blah, 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 blah. Totally incorrect thinking on my part. So I walk in the office, been there about 5 minutes, and it's about, 2:30. Call her in there, close the door. Kaylin's sitting in there with me. And I start in on, we've had kind of a tough start to the year. And I told y'all in the last 2 or 3 staff calls we've had on Wednesdays, I told y'all I'm going to have to start making some certain cuts in certain areas and some changes. And one of the ways we're going to do that is we're going to need to cut your hours back from 8:30 to 5 to 10 to 3. And the first thing that happens is she starts vibrating.
Okay.
Let me say that again.
Literally.
She literally, in her chair, starts vibrating. And when I say that, I guess the only way I can accurately describe it, I told somebody that afternoon late after all this happened, I said, it's like she was at like a holiness church revival and the Spirit had got a hold of her.
Literally.
And her body is literally, her entire body is vibrating.
Do you think she was trying to hold back from coming across the desk?
Yes, because of what I'm about to say. So she starts crying, like openly, like ugly crying, but it's not a disappointment crying. It feels like, to me, it's an anger crying. So now she's vibrating. Her whole body is vibrating. Just like, you remember those old football machines where you put the football helmet on the machine, it'd vibrate? Mm-hmm. That's what she looked like. And I'm sitting next to her exactly how you and I are sitting right now, okay? Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like even this distance, this is how far we were. Kaylin's across the desk. And she starts vibrating. She starts ugly crying, like crying. And we're sitting there in silence, all three of us, as she's vibrating and ugly crying. And I said,
You are one for some awkward silence.
I am. Yeah, love it. And so I'm letting her cry because I'm thinking, well, sometimes in life you just need to cry, Yeah. We're all sitting there just like I am right now. Just dead silence. And I said, Amy, I can tell you're real emotional right now. And I tell you, when we're done talking, I think, it's only like 2:30, 3 o'clock. I said, why don't you it was a Friday.
And by the way, you didn't fire.
Didn't fire. I just told her we're cutting her hours back. I said, why don't you take the rest of the day off? Think about it over the weekend. We'll reconvene on a phone call or Zoom call Monday, and we'll kind of, figure out what we want to, you can figure out what you want to do here.
And are you thinking at this time, I made a mistake, I should have just let her go?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet, because she really hasn't said anything except she's vibrating from head to toe. Again, like the Spirit has gotten a hold of her. And she's ugly crying. She really hasn't said anything yet. And I made a comment. I said, do you have any questions? And she kind of like shot a look at me real fast, and she said, no, I don't have any questions. And then she looked over at Kaylin, and the best I can remember, she kind of threw her hands up in the air again, like spirit has gotten a hold of her, and she said, through her crying, she said, you know what I'm going through. And then she said a couple of things that were incoherent, like statements that I couldn't understand what she was saying. And then the next thing she said was, I don't understand. I don't understand. And I said, well, Amy, it's probably my fault because I'm trying to, I'm the agency owner, everything's my fault, which is true. For those of you that don't understand that, call me and I'll tell you exactly what I mean by that. But everything that happens in your agency is your fault, whether you want it to be or not. And this girl's been through a lot of tragedy. I don't know if I told you this or not, but I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, her husband passed away in his sleep. Like she woke up that morning, rolled over, and her husband had passed away. Yeah. She's been through a lot of tragedy. She's had a lot of tragedy happen in her life. And I thought about all this as I'm thinking about having to go down there and let her go.
That's where the compassion comes in.
100%. Yeah. So she said, I don't understand. And I said, well, it's probably my fault. I probably did a poor job of communicating. So let me go back through everything that I just said again, and we'll go back through it. And I go back through it all again, and then all of a sudden, she jumps out of her chair. Now, y'all, when I say jumps out of her chair, she put her hands on the two, what are these called? Like the armrest of the chair, and kind of just popped up real fast. And as she popped up, she simultaneously kind of turns towards me. And that's when I thought, this girl's going to hit me in the face, and it is going to really hurt when she either hits or slaps me. But I'm still sitting there just like I am right now, real comfortable. I'm looking up at her because she's standing up. And she goes, did you tell me that I could leave for the rest of the day today and we could get back together Monday? And I said, yep, I sure did. She said, I think I'll take you up on that. Just like that. She goes, I think I'll take you up on that. And y'all, she spins around, walks straight out the door, gets her purse from her desk, walks out the front door of the office, and leaves. And Kaylin and I are sitting there in dead silence for probably 30 seconds and she's gone. She's
what
gone.
The heck was that?
And Kaylin's face looked like it was as red as a stop sign. She was so mad at her, not me, her, about just how she had acted and her body language. And
how old is this person? Just for context.
35,
yeah, so
probably.
Too old to
35, 30, 32.
Too old, to have not dealt with something like this before, and too old to act like a child.
So we're sitting there, and I'm staring out the window, and because there's a window out into the downtown area of Hamilton, and I'm staring out the window, and I look over at Kaylin, and finally, after I've stared out the window for about 30 seconds, and I said, well, Kaylin, I'm going to tell you what I just experienced. And she said, what's that? And I said, well, I've been sitting here for 30 seconds staring out the window thinking to myself, I think this experience that we just had together solidifies that Scott will never be a CEO of any major business because, first of all, why do I care so much about a damn receptionist that I'm trying to help? And here you think the damn CEO of Travelers Insurance gives a shit whether they let one of their receptionists goes? She may care if it's her brother-in-law's kid, but other than that, they might not even know that it happened, right?
Well, also too, cutting somebody's hours. If let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say she didn't react that way and said, "Yes, sir, I understand," and stayed on.
100%. I'd have bent over backwards 10 times to help her.
Was a freaking rock star, got her license, proved to you, hey, I want to be here.
We wouldn't be having that conversation.
You would have probably moved her back to full time.
Oh well, yeah, exactly. Well, funny you mentioned that. as part of what I was saying to her while she's vibrating and not listening to what I'm saying and crying, that's exactly what I said. I said, Amy, I'll tell you what else I'm going to do for you. This isn't just bad news. There's some good news here. If I said, I'm going to give you, now you failed your insurance license twice, your insurance exam. I'm going to give you until Halloween Day, October 31st, which at that time would have been 3 months and 10 days to get your license. If you get your license by Halloween Day, October 31st,
We'll move you back.
we will move you back to full time. Bradley did not even make a dent in this conversation. I don't know that she heard me. And I'm about to tell y'all what I learned from this, because this is the second time in 3 months that this has happened to me. Okay? I didn't tell y'all the other story, but here's the finale. 10 or 15 minutes after this happens, I get in my truck and I start heading back to Pine Ridge, Alabama, because now it's like 3:30 in the afternoon, 3 o'clock, something like that. And I get about 30 minutes down the road, and I've had a chance to really think about this. And I thought, number one, if I let her stay on, is there any Chinaman's chance in hell that this young lady is a good employee moving forward? And the answer is no. Number two, if I let her stay on, do I want to go through the movie sequel of part one again if I do have to let her go?
No.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we've already vibrated and cried and looked at me like we want to hit Scott in the face. What happens in part two of that movie? It's going to be as bad, if not worse. So I called Kaylin, and I got Clint on the phone call at the same time, and I said, let me tell you two things I'm not going to do. I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going through that again. Number two, I am not driving my ass back down to Hamilton Monday to fire her or to let her go. I'm not doing it. So I hung up with her, hung up with them, and I called the young lady, and she answered the phone. She answered her cell phone when I called her. Now, again, this is like 3:30 on Friday afternoon. And I said, hey, Amy, this is Scott Howell. And she said, Scott, first thing I ever met, Scott, I want to apologize. I probably overreacted. I was just, when you were talking to me, I was thinking about my son who's like 12 years old and how I was going to provide for him. And I got upset, blah, blah, blah. And I stopped her and I said, whoa. I said, listen, you don't have to apologize to me. You don't have to apologize to me. I understand that was emotional for you. I get it. I understand that. But I said, I've had a little time to think about it in the last hour since you left. And today's going to be your last day with iProtect Insurance. And I was going to try to get off the phone with her as quickly as I could, because I knew that she would start in on why and what and da-da-da-da-da. And it just so happened, and I did not mean to do this, I did not hang up on her. As I finished saying that to her, you today's your last day with iProtect Insurance. When I got the word insurance out of my mouth, I went through a dead spot somewhere between Moulton, Alabama, and Decatur, Alabama. I was on the 2-lane back roads in rural Alabama, and my phone dropped. And so she did not even have a chance to come back at me. Now, I did not hang up on her. But sure, and that was her last day. I had this spidey sense that she was going to do something. And
Pound of flesh.
Well, just the vibrating and the crying and the gnashing of teeth and how mad she was.
Yeah, because this may be a little heartless, but my counter argument would be, okay, if you're worried about your son, like half a job is better than no job.
Correct. Yeah.
And
by the way,
Kaylin
and I could have gotten her something else
and,
too.
and by the way, like I don't know that there's ever been an easier time right now, at least in Alabama, to get a job if you want a job.
That's right. So I'd had these thoughts in my head because I told you she's been through a lot of tragedy. And based on that meeting that I had never seen her act that way before, I could tell she had some mental instability there going too. Sure enough, the next day, she sends Kaylin a text message that she's going to take her kid to her mom's house and she's going to come back to her house and she's going to end it. Yeah. She's going to commit suicide.
Did you believe that? Because I like to think that somebody who's actually going to do that's not going to tell somebody ahead of time.
Well, that's what Kim said. Now, I will say
And that might be a little harsh.
I do know people who have done that 3, 4, 5, 6 times where it's that cry for help that you're talking about. And then that 7th time, they don't call somebody and they actually do it. I have seen that before. And you really don't know, right? But you are correct, and Kim is correct. Most of the time, when somebody does that or some iteration of that, whether it's a phone call, a letter, whatever, they don't do it. But you still feel bad. So we quickly, we knew some people in Hamilton that were kin to her. We sent them the text, hey, you need to go check on her. Got all this kind of squared away. And she didn't. And I do think that, she is, I haven't talked to her, but I know from me talking to Kaylin, I think she's in a better place now. But the thing that I learned in that conversation and in the conversation I had 3 months prior that I've never told on this podcast is with employees, and I'm about to say a very unpopular opinion, guys. Please don't shoot the messenger. There are a lot of people that are emotional, okay, in conversations. I have noticed that with my female team members, okay, we'll just say team members, that one area that I need to improve on and that I'm desperately working on improving on because it's happened, I feel like Charlie Brown kicking the football. When I have conversations, especially tough conversations, whether it's this particular scenario or really just almost like a performance review where I come in, I sit down with somebody and I talk about, this is what you're doing really well. These are some areas you can improve on. If I lead the conversation with the negative, and I don't get the positive out first, whatever that negative thing is, whatever that thing is that caused me to maybe sit down, and sometimes it's almost like nothing major, but just something that maybe I just feel like, we just need to have a discussion about. Plain speak is best understood. That's an old country saying. If I don't lead with the good first, they never hear one word. Not one word after whatever I lead that negative thing with, they never hear anything else.
Compliment sandwich.
And so it's almost like you have to come in, sit down, and go, hey, let me tell you all the great stuff you're doing here. 10 minutes on that. Okay, we covered that. You understood, you heard that, right? Oh, yeah, man, that's great. I'm so happy, and I love working here, and this is great, and this is the best job I've ever had, and I love you, and you're the best boss ever. Okay, let's talk about a couple things we could improve on. Because if you do it, I'm telling y'all, listen to me. If you do it the backwards way, and you walk in and you start with anything, even remotely, even if it's not negative, maybe it's just constructive criticism. That is the only thing. Once you say that thing, whatever that thing is, you can forget about them remembering anything else in that conversation. Yeah. That is all they are focused on.
So I think the most important thing when it comes to letting people go is, to some degree, they have to know it's coming. Now, the only caveat to that is if they do something egregious where it's automatic termination, which you've had a couple of those. We had one of those this year, actually. I think they've got to know it's coming. Now, it puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage because they know it's coming. You've got to hope that you have hired the type of people that aren't going to do anything nefarious on the way out, and what I mean by that, by know it's coming is, hey, here's a conversation, here's another conversation. You know, I would argue in this case, you know, you didn't go in there with a termination in mind, even though you had considered it. And the way she reacted, she had to be expecting that to some degree. Like, there's no way he's going to let me stay on after I vibrated in his office and acted the way that I did. So that's number one. Number two, if you've got someone who, you know, I look at us as we're like the shepherds of these sheep, right? And if one of your people is not behaving, it's our job as the leader to help these people develop themselves in their career and their skills and that sort of thing. I've got a buddy who's the fire chief of a fire department. And one thing I love that he always does is his promotions within the fire department are all, we actually should have him on. He'd be a great conversation. His promotions in his fire department are 100% based on how much personal and self-development you are doing. Not really performance, because he's like, hey, anybody that works here has to be a high performer.
Right.
How are you developing yourself? And so I think if you have someone that's not developing themselves, not doing the things that's going to help them advance in their career, and then you have some other stuff that warrant termination, you have to remember in the back of your head that this is kind of the last straw, and in a way, I'm helping them. Because if I can't get through to this person, the only other thing that can do, like some of us who have been fired, I think would say that in some ways it's the best thing that's ever happened to. Have you ever been fired?
Absolutely, I have.
You would probably say, because you're a motivated person, you know, in a lot of ways. And so you have to look at it that way, is like, and I think that's the way you approach the conversation. It's like, look, you know, it's not working out here, but here's the things you need to do to improve. And here's where the train went off the track. So you have to remember that, number one. You know, number two, you know, we've let some folks go that wanted to get their pound of flesh.
Right.
That you're going to have a large percentage of them, 40, 50%, that they're going to be pissed off and they want to get their pound of flesh. Let me give you one of the best tips I've ever heard for this. It came from my wife. I'm firing you. Okay. And you say, can I just say something? So when I let people go, I don't even give them the opportunity to talk. We're in a right to work state. I don't have to give them hey, today's your last day. Need you to sign this. Here's your last check, etc. I give them their last check physically. That way there's no question. You know what I mean? Because they could go to the labor board and say, oh, Scott hadn't paid me yet. Well, payroll's not for 2 weeks. You know what I mean? So,
by the way, I did give her 3 weeks of severance.
I'll get to that in a second. So, can I say something? Tell you what, you're emotional. I'm emotional. This is not a good situation. I don't want you to say anything that you're going to regret. I don't want to say anything I'm going to regret. Why don't you type that up to me in an email and you send it to me in an email?
See, I love that. I don't think you should do an exit interview.
And then you know what you do when that email comes in? Delete.
Yeah.
You don't even, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And my wife learned that from somebody else. And I'm like, that's one of the best things, because it gives them a chance to formulate theirs. And you can read it if you want to. And for me, Scott, with severance, I always pay severance. There's been one time in the past 3 years that I haven't paid, and that was that person this year that did something pretty bad. Not illegal, but just was not, you know, didn't have the best interest of the organization at heart. And I always pay severance somewhere between 1 and 2 months. I've done 2 before. I usually do 1. But the thing is, I do that for me. I don't do that for them. I do that so
you can
I know
sleep at night.
Their kids are eating and nobody, you know what I mean?
They've got plenty of time to go look for another job or apply for unemployment or whatever they're going to do.
And I will say, around like HR and hiring and firing, all the insurance agency owners that you and I have talked to, one thing that I see a lot, are people that have Sally in the office that nobody likes, that causes all the problems, that stirs the pot, that's really not doing a great job, maybe working 60% of what he or she could. Well, she's been with me for 6 years. And they let that person drag on. Well, what you don't consider is that affects everybody else in the company. When you have someone who is either not doing their job or taking 15 breaks a day to go smoke a cigarette or something like that. It affects other people. The best thing you can do for your company is get the people off the train that don't need to be on the train. And I will tell you guys, listen to this. A lot of people struggle with hiring. When you are willing to part ways with people who need to be parted ways with, it makes your hiring so much easier. You know, I don't believe in hire slow, fire fast. I believe if you fire fast, you can hire fast because you can take more chances. You know, dude, we're a startup insurance agency in a town of nothing but blue blood, 50-year-old insurance agencies. I'm not a lot of times getting a shot at the cream of the crop, right? So you have to take shots on people that maybe you see a little sliver of something in.
Right.
And when you are willing to part ways with people very fast that are not cutting it or are not a good fit, it makes the hiring process so much easier. And I learned this from Matt Namoli. I was on a board with Matt Namoli, and we were hiring somebody in a position that was probably $240,000 a year. And one of the board members raised their hand and said, I'm just scared this is going to be a $240,000 mistake. And Matt said, it won't be a $240,000 mistake. It'll be a $60,000 mistake, because if we get 3 months in and it's not working, we'll let them go.
That's right.
And I'm like, that's such a brilliant way to look at it, because if you hire somebody for $40,000, you know, you're hopefully not going to make it the whole $40,000 before you realize they're not going to work out.
Sure.
And so it makes things way more easier in the hiring process when you're willing to do that. And a lot of agency owners aren't. But if you do some of those things, and I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the audience. If you do some of those things, Scott and I said in the beginning, like, make sure they know it's coming. Do it with compassion. Don't overcomplicate it. Pay a little bit of severance. That way you don't have to worry about them paying their bills. It makes a lot of these things a lot easier, and you can part ways with these people.
Yeah, you're letting them back out in the wild to find what is right for them, right?
And the ones that are easy. So the last one that we did, which was the one that did something bad, had a similar reaction to yours.
Right.
And she actually showed up an hour and a half late the day of her firing.
Yes.
And I actually was not there. It was when Cal was in the hospital, so Kenneth had to do it. And I told Kenneth, I said, man, don't you just love when they make it easy on you?
Yeah.
It's not hard. The ones that are hard, I'll tell you, the ones that are hard are the people that are good people, are decent at their job, but you just know, and I've come to this point, you just kind of know in your gut that it's not going to work out.
Long term, this isn't the right thing for you.
We had somebody like that we hired about this time last year, stayed here 3 months, and I was like, look, this is not because of anything you've done.
Yep.
I've just done this long enough to know that you're a little bit not happy here, and long term, that's going to turn out to be a lot not happy here, and you and I are going to resent each other. The other thing I do that I left out, if I like them, is I always at least set them up with a job interview. Because the thing is, if they have a license, there's 8 million agencies out there that'll hire them, and you can almost always get them an interview. So I always, if they're a good person, and they go out the door the right way, I always set them up with a job interview after the fact. By the way, 100% of those people have gotten that job. So this girl I mentioned, you know, I actually got her set up with a job right after, and she did, I think, pretty well in that. But I forgot what I was saying, but basically you just have to you have to do it for the sake of your company. Like, you've got to look at your company as your baby, and if your baby has something wrong with it, you got to fix it.
That's right. So I'm going to close this podcast out, but before I do, I got 2 things to say. Number one, to Bradley's point earlier, when he started talking, he mentioned people kind of have that spidey sense that it's coming. Well, with this young lady, she'd been with us for about a little over a year. She had gotten written up twice. And the last time she got written up, which was probably 6 months ago, Clint Orr went down to her office and did some constructive criticism. This is what you're doing well. Got a couple areas we need to work on. And he said, I'm coming down here, and this was what he told me verbatim, he said, Scott, I told her sitting in there, look, we got to improve on these couple of things that you're doing because I'm down here talking to you now, and the next person that's going to be down here talking to you is Scott. And you do not want Scott down here talking to you. So you're right. I think she probably did to some degree see it coming because instead of going forward and getting her license and training up as a commercial account manager, she was kind of stuck in neutral. You know, she wasn't, she was going to be relegated to a receptionist, basically.
Yeah.
That's number one. First thing. Second thing, I want to tell all these agents out here, because I know a lot of them are like sitting there and through this whole podcast, they've been like, well, damn, Scott, you know, 40,000, you had to cut 40,000 expenses.
They're either thinking this is the most valuable podcast I've ever listened to, or they're like, this is awful.
Yeah, right.
People.
So we're going to have a guest on tomorrow that kind of confirmed what I'm about to say, but be a very good podcast. But let me tell you what's going on in my agency, guys. I just want to keep this short and sweet because we got to jump off here and get on another one here in a little while. But what is going on, and I told Carrie Wallace this probably 2 months ago. She called me one day. We were talking about expenses and revenue and those types of things. I said, Carrie, do you know what my problem is? And she said, no, tell me. And I said, well, you know, we're kind of as an agency stuck in neutral. We're not growing, which for the past 5 years we'd grown at a rate, her words, not mine, of 25% a year, which is way above what, you know, I think the average independent agency grows by about 10% a year. I said, the reason we're stuck in neutral, Carrie, is I have 14 employees that work full-time for iProtect Insurance, and I have 2 salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
2. A lot of the people in my agency that have the term insurance agency on their business, insurance agent on their business card, are actually account managers.
Yeah. A lot of agencies do that.
Exactly. And I think you mentioned it in a podcast we did, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago that went live. You know, if you want to grow, guys, you got to have a bunch of people that can sell insurance. If you have a bunch of account managers instead of insurance agents, again, I've got 2 insurance agents. I've got a ton of account managers. Please do not reach out to me if you want to be an account manager. I don't need an account manager. I got plenty of them. I got lots of them. But I think it's that for that reason, because we have two people who are actually truly sales insurance agents and 2 and probably 8 account managers, it is very, very hard to grow like that. So with that being said, if you're wondering, well, Scott, why are you stuck in neutral? Why aren't you growing at 25% a year? It's a blend of having account managers instead of insurance agents. It's a blend of a broken agency, I guess overall agency makeup of, you know, you've got to have certain people who have certain job descriptions and do certain things. I think that our agency is going to have to, and is in the process of what I call finding out, okay, we know we've got the right people on the bus now. Now let's put everybody in the right seat. And the way we're doing that with our personal lines department is we are breaking it down to, okay, here are the 6 employees that we have in our personal lines department within iProtect Insurance. What does each one of those people do the best? You got to figure out what each one of those people do the best and then let them do that thing. So with that being said, effective today, Monday, August the 5th, we have created a remarketing team for our personal lines led by Danielle Glover. Why Danielle Glover? She has insurance agent on her business card. She does write some business. If I take it to her, she'll usually write it. Danielle Glover is not an insurance agent. Danielle Glover, for 16 years with Fountain, Parker, and Harburger up in Huntsville, Alabama, was a remarketing specialist, account manager. She is a remarketing account manager. I tell people this all the time. I've said it on this podcast. It applies to relationships like business, but both are applicable. Do not marry a cat and think you're going to teach it how to bark. Rain, you listen to this? Do not marry a cat. Do not go to the pound over here to the local animal shelter and get a German Shepherd dog and think you're going to teach it how to meow. German Shepherd dogs, Bradley, do not meow. And I don't give a damn what kind of training. You can send it to Caesar Milan. You can go down here to a $6,000 dog college and think that they're going to teach that German Shepherd how to meow. That German Shepherd's never going to meow, guys. And I say that to say this. We have got to segment and get people, especially, I think we already have on our commercial side, but on our personal line side, we've got to get people in the best possible position to do what they do best. And that's what we're in the process of doing. Then we've got to free up enough money to go out and actually hire insurance agents. Big difference between an account manager and an insurance agent. Account managers will walk into your office when you interview them, and the very first words that will always come out of their mouth might be the third thing they say after hello. I don't want to sell.
Yeah.
They do not want to sell. They do not like the pressure of selling. Do not try to turn that person into an insurance agent, guys. Again, you cannot teach a German Shepherd how to meow.
Well, it's interesting, too, that the smaller you are, it's easier to blur those lines.
Right.
And as you get bigger, those blurred lines become problems.
Correct.
It's like who does what job.
Correct.
Yeah.
And here's another thing I'm going to say. Bradley has experienced explosive growth this year, okay? He's grown a lot more. And we, you know, I could say that this hard market up in North Alabama, I can make that excuse. But here's what I've told my team who wants to make that excuse. You know, it's funny how y'all want to sit up here and talk about how, you know, we're not growing because of this hard market and carriers don't want to write business. Yet Bradley Flowers is in Mobile, Alabama, and they've had the best year they've ever had. The difference between those two entities, Portal Insurance and iProtect Insurance, Bradley has systematically gone out and found and hired, again, he just talked about it, hire fast, fire fast. He's hired a bunch of insurance agents, and guess what they're doing? They're writing new business. And I think the older I get and the more I'm in this business, the more I realize that. So I've got a couple of account managers that have insurance agent on their business card, and they are unicorns. But they are the reason I call them account managers. They're not going to go outside into the big bad world and go hunt business. They're not going to develop referral relationships. They're not going to do anything other than their internal sales. If Scott Howell has somebody call him or direct message him, says, "Hey Scott, do you write this kind of insurance?" "Yeah, we sure do it every day." And I hand them that on a silver platter, they'll write it. But they are not going to ever be the type of agent that goes out and hunts it and kills it and makes 35 cold calls a day. They're not going to do it.
Well, it's interesting because we have the opposite problem. You know, you said you had more account managers than producers. We are producer heavy.
No, not
and
us.
We've balanced that out a little bit, but that comes with its share of problems too.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, which we can talk about on a later podcast.
There's got to be a healthy balance there. So to end this podcast, here's what I'm going to tell y'all. You've got to, as Bradley just said, have a very good blend of enough agents that your agency's growing and they're going out and they're killing new business. But then you've also, on the backside, you've got to have enough account managers to be able to clean up what they screw up and answer billing questions and get the bank the EOIs and COIs that they need. You've got to have a good blend of both. And if you'll do that, then I think what you'll see is your agency growing year over year instead of like I Protect Insurance, where we are currently stuck in neutral and we are having to make some tough decisions relative to both, best practices. How many people do we really need? Do we still need that billboard in Athens that we've had for 12 years? Nope, we don't. So there's $6,000 cut out of the budget right there. Those are the types of things I'm talking about.
The other thing too, it's really easy to get bloat in your expenses.
Yes.
Especially as an agency owner that has access to so much technology that we do, and people listen to this podcast do, and you see a new tool or a shiny object,
Right.
you want to try it.
Right.
There's always,
And then 4 years later, you're like, oh shit, we got that. We don't even use that.
it would not shock you guys that one thing that Carrie Wallace does is she tracks your expenses as a percentage of revenue and uses other agencies your size as the benchmark.
Correct.
It would not shock you that one of the largest categories on our P&L relative to other agencies percentage-wise is the technology and IT, because I like that stuff.
Sure.
But there's any agency, like I was telling somebody the other day, like when we buy an agency, the first thing I do, or we're looking to buy an agency, the first thing I do is I go in and see what can I cut.
Right.
And I told the person, I said, but by the way, if somebody were buying me, they would find stuff to cut. That's not important. There's always stuff you can cut out. I will say right now we are running as lean as we ever have in terms of expenses in regards to that. Now our payroll is higher than it's ever been. But anyway, you want to close this out?
I do. Guys, hope you enjoyed this podcast. This is, I've always kept it 100 for you guys. I have never, ever one time intentionally lied or said something that wasn't true or whatever. And I think that follows with today's podcast. I am here to help agents any way I can. Without including real names, I've always tried to say exactly what happened, exactly how it happened. And I only do that, guys, and I tell these stories because I want you guys to know that wherever you are in the season of your career, whether that's 6 months, 6 weeks, 6 years, 60 years, stuff like this is going to happen. Let Uncle Scott be the one to make all the mistakes. You listen to this podcast, and that way when this thing happens, you can go, oh, I remember Uncle Scott telling this story. Here's what happened to him and how he screwed up, so I can actually do it the right way and not make the same mistakes that he's made throughout his career to, make him have to live in a Meemaw Pawpaw $150,000 house. He can't even freaking asphalt his own driveway. He has to borrow money from the bank. He has to keep amounts on his credit card. He didn't do it the right way all the way through. And that's why he's still poor and why he doesn't have a condo at the beach or have the nice things, or why he pulls up to Bradley's office this morning in an 05 Toyota Tundra with 238,000 miles on it. I'm not going to make...
That's not a lot of miles for a Toyota.
I'm not going to make those mistakes so I can drive the new car and have the nice things and do all the other stuff. So anyway, that's the purpose behind that. Guys, you are listening to the Insurance Guys podcast, and as I end every episode, rewards come from action, not discussion. Get your ass out from behind that desk today. Go hire great people. Make sure that you don't try to make a German Shepherd meow or a cat bark like a dog, because it's not going to happen. And by the way, same thing applies to marriage. If you think you're marrying a German Shepherd and that sumbitch is going to meow like a cat, I got a news flash for you. It ain't going to happen. So you might want to think about that next time you're about to go haul off and marry somebody. Hint, hint, Rand. Anyway, go make money for your family, for your wife, for your kids' college fund, for your parents and your in-laws that are struggling out there. Go make money for them. Write good business for the agencies that you represent, and write good business for the companies that you represent. Bradley Flowers, I love you.
Love you too, man.
Guys, you were listening to the Insurance Guys podcast, and we love each one of you. Thank you so much for being a part of our family. We'll see you back here real soon. Take care.